Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you today about the project that we've been doing for the past almost 2 years in Union County. We started the project as an AmeriCorps project. And part of that, can everybody hear me all right? Okay. So we started the project as a VISTA project a couple of years ago. After I graduated college, I came and talked to Judge Jenkins about starting this project through the Appalachian Coal Country team. They had never done a VISTA project to this extent in Union County, so he was pretty excited about it. The VISTA project has been around since the 1960s and serves places that are poverty-stricken. And the Appalachian Coal Country team takes that program and applies it to Appalachia. Well, I convinced the Appalachian Coal Country team that we're not in the Appalachia region, but we suffer from many of the same problems in some parts of our community. So I got them to sponsor our project with a grant. And it's a 3-year position, which sort of got hampered a little bit by the semester last year. And from that, they've been able to recoup the numbers for the Appalachian Coal Country team, but we're not actually a part of the VISTA program. The county actually decided that we weren't going to do that anymore, but I'm a member of their staff now. The Garden Coalition, we started it as a brainstorming session between a lot of different groups in the community. We really went into the community and asked different organizations, what would you like to see a garden program look like? They wanted to build the gardens, to educate the people how to grow their own food, and to take the food that we were growing in the educational gardens and donate that to groups that were already serving underprivileged people in the community. So we were teaching people how to grow, donating the produce, and then, we were teaching the people how to grow, growing it, and then donating that produce. So that really forms our goals. As complicated of a program as it is, we have 9 different community gardens. We're up to, last year, we're up to 11 this year. And we work with as many as 180 to 200 volunteers this year is what we're anticipating to work with. 500 people may benefit from our garden programs this year. So we're a pretty big program, but as complicated as that is, we're still just keeping it simple with the 3 goals: the educate, the grow, and the distribute. And we're hoping to establish a more robust distribution program on a model of CSA, which is Community Supported Agriculture. Box that up and ship it home to people at little to no cost to them to help them eat healthier. And then we're hoping to actually work with a few organizations to expand our farmers market and piggyback off of some organizations that are already doing that in our home county. Most of our gardens, either parts of them or all of them, are using our trademark raised beds. We build 8 by 4 foot raised beds out of untreated lumber, and we fill them with compost. So they cost about $25 to build with the lumber materials. We get the compost donated to us as scrap leaves that are picked up and set around at our old airport in the county. We get the city to deliver those to us, and then we cart them around on a tractor and fill the raised beds with them. But at most, if you had to buy the compost, it would be around $70 to build that bed. And it averages about 1 week, 1 hour of work per week. This is a bed that we tracked last year. We did 3 seasons worth of gardening in it. This was one of our low-income housing beds over at Dunbar Heights, the housing authority. And she grew about $130 worth of produce in that one 8 by 4 foot bed. So she didn't have to buy the materials for it. We paid for that. We brought volunteers in and installed it, and she got all the cost benefits. And it's probably going to grow this same amount for the next 4 or 5 years before we'll have to replace that bed. So it'll pay for itself 2 times over just in one season. Focusing on education is a big part of our program, like I mentioned before. We're using the gardens mainly to teach people how to grow. Just growing the food is kind of a byproduct of that, and we're fortunate enough that we had plenty of food to give away last year. But we like to bring different people out to the gardens, as many as we can, to demonstrate how you can grow something fast, with as little work as possible, faster, efficient. With these raised beds, you don't have to have a tiller, or if people want to do their own home gardens, we do have resources available to do that. We've been doing food preparation and preservation workshops. We did them on a small scale, just doing PowerPoints and things like that last year, passing out recipes with the produce we were distributing, but we're hoping to get into more hands-on cooking classes this year. I had a chance to talk to our representative, Ms. Miles, yesterday, and she said she'd be on board with coming and leading some of the workshops and maybe getting that throughout the county, more throughout the county that she serves. And then piggybacking off of the Henderson Extension Office with the Master Gardener program that they do. We don't really offer that in Union County, but I've talked to several of the extension agents in Union County that we might be able to offer that on a limited scale, so something not as robust as Henderson County, but that covers the same topics in a shorter time. And then a home processing certification. We have a couple of community kitchens in our community that serve the churches or the organizations that they're at. We're hoping to use some of those organizations to either do cooking workshops, to process some of the food, and either sell it or donate it to people or have it in a food bank so that we're not wasting some of the produce that we're going to be growing this year. Our community gardens are at 3 schools now, so we bring the kids out and show them about gardening, anywhere from just how to plant something, how something grows from a seed to a plant. And then we also talk about things like greenhouse effect. We built some plastic hoop houses to go over our raised beds so that they can grow them in the fall and spring. And we're also talking about doing some more feed and read gardens. Last year we had several feed and read gardens in our community. We served about 60 children with that. They came out and planted food or stuff that we'd already grown. They were taking home. So they were taking home 2 or 3 times a week, 4 or 5 pound bags of produce, every one of them. So they were able to take that home and hopefully eat a healthier diet because of that. Our program is strictly volunteer driven, with the exception of one person who I have here today, Mallory. She's our intern. She was part of that high school ag program last year, so we'd like to partner with the high school and get people of high school and college age. She's attending Murray right now, but she came back for the summer to help me. And part of that is helping out with the garden, each garden site itself. Each garden has its own committee, from 3 to 5, all the way up to 16 or 17 members that serve on those committees. To get these committees together, we used existing organizations, our own health coalition, different churches, the library with their feed and read groups. And then we did some outreach and promotion to recruit people into that, get people that they were either going to give the produce to or bring people in to teach, different things like that. Now we got people to commit to volunteer. We asked them what were they interested in doing. Do they want to come out and weed and water? Do they want to recruit more volunteers? Do they want to do some more fundraising? Do they want to plant or pick or distribute? So we asked them specifically what they want to do. When it comes time to do those activities, we call that specific person that wanted to do that. So we're always doing things that the volunteers want to do. And we keep a huge database of volunteers. So if we need to have an all-hands-on-deck call, like I'm going to talk about later, we can send out an email, we can make a bunch of phone calls, and we can get everybody together. So that's a pretty big effort with over 180 volunteers for just a couple of people. And then we like to keep the people involved that are out volunteering in organizations. So once every couple of months, I go around and make a small presentation about how the Garden Coalition's doing, where our funding's coming from, where we're at, how much food we've grown, and that thing. And then last year we actually had a meeting in the middle of the summer, or to the end of the summer, where we invited all of our volunteers and our organizations to the Job Corps Culinary Arts Facility, where they cooked a big meal with our fresh grown produce. And we had several in attendance there. We gave a big report on what we had done so far and how we were doing with the garden program. So that's a big part of what I do, what Mallory does, with the coordinating the sites. Organizing the volunteers, as I mentioned before, we're a volunteer program, and we got the whole idea from the Garden Coalition from our volunteers. The volunteers didn't want to have a big community garden in the middle of the county. They wanted to have several small gardens where they could just drive a couple of minutes. A little bit of a problem for me because I got to go visit all these things. But it was what they wanted, and they're the ones working on it, so that's what we decided to do. Each site has a different program. So, for instance, the Senior Citizen Center, they have a Meals on Wheels program that we donate most of that produce to, or another garden might choose to donate to the Senior Center. For example, the Dunbar Heights Garden, they have raised bed boxes. It's the low-income housing in our community. They have boxes outside of their units. Each of the homes or the gardeners come out of their homes, they garden, and they take the produce for themselves, and then we're building a bigger community garden there, so an in-ground garden instead of raised beds. So every garden there that we have has a different program, where they're putting the produce, how they're teaching the gardeners. So it's a pretty complicated process, but it's individualized, and that's how I'm thinking we're getting so much support. The gardens are installed with the help of existing volunteer groups, such as the Job Corps. They've been a huge help with us. And other groups that have come in, such as we're looking for the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and different groups, because the biggest part is getting the garden started. After we've started the garden, the volunteers don't have as much work to do with maintaining it, because we're talking about building beds, moving a lot of dirt, doing some planting. Weeding and watering is just a small portion of that. It doesn't take as much time or effort. We do also provide a few incentives. Last year we were able to provide t-shirts to all our volunteers with the help of some community business support. We also get to work alongside experienced master gardeners. So if you have a question and you haven't gardened before, you're learning from somebody who's gardening. And with 160 volunteers, not all of those are master gardeners, but a lot of them have extensive experience with gardening. So the people that haven't gardened before are getting experience from those who've done it for decades, a lot longer than I've been alive in some cases. And then we do donate. We'll go and buy huge, truckloads of plants to plant at our gardens. One of the benefits also is that if we finish planting a site and we run out of space in that garden, we'll send the volunteers home with the leftover plants. So we have a lot of volunteers showing up, hoping that we won't plant everything and they'll get to take some home. And then we bolster the connections between our existing community organizations. I've never seen something as cool as pitting a couple of cities against one another. Who can get the most volunteer hours? Who can get the most money fundraised at different sites? So talking about, well, Morganfield has done $1,000 already. You've done $800. You think you can match what they're doing? So it's pretty cool to get a competitive nature in there and talk about what everybody's grown and how many volunteers. So we've been able to use that. I think that having that competitive spirit has really helped us get a lot of people to come out. One of the biggest things that I do in the winter is fundraising, talking to local businesses and getting some support from them. $100 here, $50 there, or trying to coordinate in-kind donations, getting people to donate tools and dirt and things like that. But one of the things we've been really fortunate with so far, we're 100% grant funded. I've written a couple of grants. Last year we were with the Healthy Communities, Kentucky Healthy Communities grant. This year we're with a grant called Grow Appalachia. Again, I convinced some group in Appalachia that we were worth investing in. And we're the only site in Western Kentucky, or even west of Appalachia. Coordinating all the grants, I use some grant networks from AmeriCorps, also the Grow Appalachia funds, and just businesses in town. And then utilizing some business donations. I always ask 3 times. Something be specific, and then if they say no to something, kind of redirect them and say, well, if you can't do that, can you do something else for us? And then also develop partnerships. I could have spent a lot of time going out and recruiting volunteers on an individual basis, but instead of doing that, I went to where the organizations already were. So I was talking to groups sometimes as large as this, so mainly in groups of 10 to 15 people that could help me out. And then the first year we started small. So we started with just a few raised beds, about 10 or less at each garden site. And this year we're going to double the size, if not triple the size of those gardens. Now that we have a process down, the volunteers know what's going on, they're not as overwhelmed by a big garden. So our garden sites throughout the county, we have 11 sites, and we're starting to do some home garden sites in between. So we're trying to hit the entire county with our garden sites. We still have a few communities that we're not in, but I'm hoping this year we can close that gap and start filling in the areas that there aren't gardens, with either home gardens or find some churches and things that are able to help us put a garden in every corner of the county. Our garden sites, I just want to show you some photos just so you get an idea of what a garden looks like. This is at an elementary school. Another is at a church that's really close to elementary school, so we use this one to bring kids in and plant. And I've never seen the funniest thing as giving some first graders about a 30-pound bag of onions, and then you'll find onions everywhere. It's just incredible. I think we still had some volunteer onions this year left over what they had planted. But they get so excited because they have permission to get dirty. And so they're always asking, hey, can I dig in the dirt? They're like, yeah, that's why you're here. So, our first garden was at the Job Corps. Naira Ford, the community and business liaison, was a huge supporter of us early on and actually showed that it can be done. So I have a lot of this to thank for her support. We even gardened on the city streets of one of our downtowns. We took the planter boxes and planted cherry tomatoes, and I don't think I ever saw one on there because they were always eaten. People would walk by and just snap them like candy. So it was the funniest thing. Everybody was asking me, can I eat those? And I said, go right ahead. That's what they're there for. We've gardened with a library, and our oldest volunteer gardener was a 94-year-old from our senior citizens or assisted living homes. He just moved there that year and was so sad that he couldn't garden. So we built him a couple of raised beds. And he was the first one to be out there shoveling dirt and raking. And Mallory could probably attest. I think he was the hardest working guy there. We all sit down for a break in the shade. He was still working. So it's kind of embarrassing. There's a couple of our gardens outside of the Dunbar Heights facility, the Morganville Housing Authority. And these are some ADA accessible beds we built at the senior housing. They're basically the same thing as the lower style, but then they're just double stacked and full of compost. This is our larger inmate garden. We had some produce that was donated from that. We would take it to the jail and they say, well, we're overloaded with fresh produce. We can't put any of this back. So donate that to another program. So we were able to use our inmate garden as well. And then we had a couple of sites, the Senior Citizen Center, a couple of churches, and then our Feed and Read program where we would take produce and distribute it. We didn't, growing all this produce, you don't always think of how you're going to get rid of it and where you're going to donate it. So we're going to work through that and be a little bit better with that this year. But we were able to get rid of all of the produce from last year. So our statistics for last year, we had 8 garden sites. We had 72 raised beds and 2 in-ground garden sites just in our community gardens. And we had our 2-acre jail garden, which grew some produce for their jail. But I separated that out from what they were taking versus what we were taking. We had 144 volunteers last year, and they coordinated about 2,200 volunteer hours. That's about 15 hours per volunteer. So when you break it down like that, it's not much. So dividing and conquering is what we choose. We call a lot of different people and try not to put our volunteers out. Last year we grew 10,100 pounds of produce, and we got rid of all of it. 5,000 pounds of it was from the jail garden. That was over and above what they needed for their facility. And then we served 368 community members with that produce, either somebody just grabbing a bag 1 week, or maybe they were a repeating customer that was the individual. So we had some people that came back for 6 weeks and took home boxes of produce or helped us out in the garden. Total, we had $78,000 worth of resources generated for the county, broken down for grants and donations, in-kind services, our volunteer hours, and our produce that we distributed to everybody. From that, we were a recipient of the 2013 GRADD Community of the Year Award, and we also have, we won the Governor's Volunteer Service Award this year, so we're going to go to Frankfurt, hopefully with a couple of our volunteers, and accept that award on behalf of our program. Mentioned last year, we were the recipient of the Kentucky Healthy Communities Award and the AmeriCorps Award that was able to get our program started. This year we're using the Grow Appalachia funds for our program, and recently we've been nominated for the State Farm Neighborhood Assist Program, which is an online vote. I checked this morning, we're in the top 16, we were 16. We were chosen out of a pool of 4,000 out of the entire country. And if we get in the top 40, we get $25,000. So all of those top 40 will get $25,000. So we made it this far. We're number 16th, and so we only have 2 more days to go. So it looks like we're going to be getting that unless something really drastic changes. So I'd encourage you, go online, look us up on Facebook, and then do some voting for us and help us stay in the top 1. This year, we're looking at growing our program. Some of the growth is going to be within the form of new sites, as well as just expanding our current gardens. We want to represent all of Union County, so we're going to add at least 5 more gardens and double the size of our program. As I mentioned before, we're part of the GRADD program, which serves 60 other sites like ours. Most of them are in Appalachia. So if you guys wanted to search their program, they have a blog where they talk about doing different garden sites and communities. So they have a pretty awesome program. I encourage you to check them out if you're interested in gardening. We're constantly bettering our methods, whether it's developing different styles of in-ground gardening. We're going to be all organic this year, so we're doing organic gardening, which means all organic pesticides and fertilizers. We're constantly figuring out how to get more volunteers and keep the ones that we have interested in gardening. And as I mentioned before, we're going to be bettering our produce delivery system, so how we can get the produce to the people faster and fresher, so that none of it goes bad. We didn't have a lot that goes bad last year, but I think any of the food waste is a shame, so we're going to try and waste no food this year. The Earl C. Clements Job Corps Center, by I think 2016 or 2017, has been charged with cutting half of their waste on their site. So I told Job Corps that we would like to help them out, because compost is what they would be doing with that food waste, and so we're going to be trying to help them compost about 80 to 90,000 pounds of their food waste a year. Once that breaks down, you'll get about 1/3 of that in volume for raised beds. That'll fill about 25 raised beds. So I know that we can do that. So we're going to call the program, I think, is Table to Garden to Table, because we're taking table scraps, we're putting them in the garden, where we're recycling the nutrients and bringing them back to the table. So we're thinking of innovative ways to grow and innovative ways to recruit people, and I really think that this program is kind of a new take on some old technology for gardening that's been around for a long time, but I think that it's getting more people excited about gardening. Always more people eating healthier and growing a healthier Union County.